We are live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be going over Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink, providing a broad spectrum macro overview of the markets, at least where I think they happen to be at this moment. During that as well, we're also going to take a look at a little bit of the DeFi sector and Ethereum 2.0. Now, stick around to the end of the episode, because it increases user watch time. But anyways, we'll just dive in. So right now on the screen, you should be able to see the Bitcoin chart on the daily. I start here often because I want to remind myself of something, that there is a lot of time involved into getting from point A to point B. Now, one of the exciting things right now is that we are in a bull market. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we started that bull market pretty much in March 2020. It was the height of the pandemic, and the literal consequence of buying when there's blood in the streets has never been more relevant. And I think one of the things that's important to remember here is that when we're studying this market accumulation sentiment, one of the things we're really focusing on is understanding human nature. Right? In a story of supply and demand, you're trying to understand human nature. So for those of you that know that Grayscale has been buying tens of millions, hundreds of billions of dollars of Bitcoin, they've been doing that since 2013. And now, although I haven't been able to actually ask them, I would love to actually know, because I don't know. If any of you know, leave this down in the comments. Did Grayscale hold on to all of their Bitcoin during the market high of 2017? And my guess would be no. Common practice is to actually trade in and out of markets quite frequently, and it helps keep the market stability, liquidity going, and it's actually how Compman usually uses his predictability to find out if there is the market to support that particular price, or will everyone just dump. Now, this has happened many times before, and Bitcoin has earned its keep as a store value, which many of us had assumed might happen. Now, on the plus side, when we start to zoom in here, okay, I'm going to have to make this episode a little longer. So for everyone that's new here, kind of catching on, what we're watching and looking at on the screen right now is what we like to focus on is understanding the accumulation and or distribution. Now, I would never short a market in an accumulation range, now knowing what I know, because it doesn't make any sense. So what I would do is find out ways to build longs. So on the Wyckoff accumulation, you have the lower market cycle and the raised market cycle. This little red one I have over here, we've simplified it into just an up and a down, basically, right? Buy low, sell high. Now, on the time frame is when it becomes really important, because what you want to be doing is buying Bitcoin back here at $100, $200, and then selling it up near 20,000, right? That would be the ultimate take profit move for the potential and the risk that you're playing on either side of the trade. Now, from an investment standpoint, you could just sit in Bitcoin, but like most, and I'm sure big companies will do the same, they're going to rebalance the portfolio into different assets as the time becomes necessary. But for now, we're just leaving the final stages of accumulation. So accumulation is made up of three segments: phases A, B, C, which is the spring, that fear, greed part. And this is the part we should focus on to some degree, because anytime you recognize these crazy fear moments from now on, and you know the asset is valued, this is the time to start accumulation. So accumulation started March 11th for those of us who don't have billions or hundreds of millions of dollars to play around with. This was the ultimate entry for long positions. And effectively, you could build a long position almost every way up here as long as you never overexposed your account. Now, this won't work forever. As a matter of fact, I think that the SOS probably maybe even shoots us even higher. Now, this is always an interesting question, is we don't want to try to predict the top of the market until the market says that there's a top. So when we were back here in November, I had said Bitcoin was likely going to go to between 16,000 and 18,000 and 17,000, because that's where the last final edge of the previous market cycle's volume supply was. And you can see it written over here in the VPVR. You have this kind of threshold hump, which is pretty much exactly what we've ran up. So when I'm looking for the consequence of this tension, this emotional tension, right? Because remember, this is people's human emotions at stake. These are people's livelihoods, people that have made lots of money playing this sector. Listening to Michael Arrington this evening in his chat with Pompliano, and he said that they were buying back in 2018 in their fund when Bitcoin was still like $13,000. So they actually had to have a big cycle, again, of accumulation before they got to this fun part, this SOS. But the SOS ultimately is defined by its top and then its reversal into the backup phase. And what's nice about this is phase E. This is the final transition phase in our accumulation range before we start to explode. So this is ultimately where you want to be entering at every single LPS, because you could have done that all the way along here at every LPS on the turnaround and done quite well for yourself. So that's been what my goal and strategy has been for the last few months. I did muck around and I played while learning a bunch, which means I had entries into a bunch of different things. A lot of them were successful and a lot of them weren't ultimately, because I gained maybe an undue amount of confidence with how successful some of them had been from the very start. So now that we see Bitcoin is forming this SOS confidence, I remember how confident I can be about something like Ethereum. Now Ethereum, what was fun is in the private group around August to July, we had this beautiful reaccumulation range taking place right below the top of the box of range D. And we managed to jump in this one, and I did really well on a kind of proof of concept trade. Not as well, I was kind of cautiously hoping I'd do a lot better on that one. It was still, we did well enough. I guess the point would be that this accumulation range here ended up breaking out for the SOS. Now notice here two things. Number one is the size and the duration. So the size and the duration of the SOS was approximately 48 days and represented an 80% move, approximately. So if we look at Bitcoin, what we're going to do is a comparative analysis, again, is approximate the start of the move to the top. We're only 35 days in. Let's say we get 60 because Bitcoin's a super sweet beast. We could go as high as $17,500. And I've said this since $11,000. Now, once that happens, it's about the backup range. So let's use Ethereum as an example. When Ethereum's backup range took place, again, which is, again, fundamentally where I think Bitcoin is going to be coming down to, how low did it come from the top? Okay, so what we do is we're going to take from the very high of the spike, and then we're going to drag that spike all the way down to where the accumulation range took place. So 30%, not to the top of the trading range, not to even the very bottom of the top of the trading range of the 786 here, but the one effectively. Never came back down as low as to hit the trading range itself. Now we could make an argument here to some degree that this automatic rallies trading range was actually up here, and what we're witnessing is kind of this weirdly segmented basically box or trading range of the Wyckoff analysis. So this could make sense. So let's do the same thing with Bitcoin and then just try to make some assertions here, or some conjecture at least. So again, we'll perfectly align the top of our box range in this one because I have it not drawn flawlessly. And our secondary line is about here. Yeah, that looks beautiful. So what would happen if we came down 30% from 17,500? That would put us approximately into the middle of the box range at around 12,000. Now, I'm not convinced it's going to come this low when it does its reaccumulation. So this next interesting part about the backup phase, what we've seen to learn is that this backup becomes a new reaccumulation channel. Sometimes it's maybe a downward facing channel with a spike like this before a break above the box. Often this would be looked on as a descending channel version. You can see, thanks to Baloo for pointing that one out, I forgot that those are so prevalent sometimes. We saw what we saw in Ethereum here, which is a weaker version, but you have a higher trading range followed by a subsequent smaller trading range down here. That's generally apparently a weaker version of accumulation, at least to start off with. So what does Bitcoin do next? I actually believe we're going to get a rising gradient bottom, something like this, where our spike comes down here and we break above the box and we continue into some astronomical prices for Bitcoin effectively. It is our money, and that is probably going to stay that way. There's a lot of value moving into this ecosystem on a consistent basis now. So what's the point of this conjecture? one of the best times to be in the market is right at the start of a bull market, because you feel like a genius. It is, everyone's going to feel like a genius for a few months, and they're going to wonder how high it can go, right? And that's one of the moments I can see right now in the market that tells me we're near that top. Now, I've made conjecture at least once or twice in my videos already that we could see a quick spike, maybe even of 19,000. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but it could. If it does, great. I'm not interested in catching the high right now. I don't want to sell my position. I want the LPS to come back down, and I want to re-leverage into this play. So once it starts to really move, because it will, you're playing with some serious weight into each move. Because I don't have $100 billion or $100 million to play around with. I don't have $10 million to play around with. So what I can do is weight my positions to make an accurate trade right at the time the market switches, and leverage into an LPS position on what might be one of the most lucrative times to invest in the tech space in our lifespan, in some of the most interesting tech we've seen around. So I really like where Ethereum is at. Again, this is going to be a longer video than others. I realized as soon as I started it, but that's okay. So we'll go back to Ethereum, and we're going to use Ethereum again for the conjecture of Bitcoin's price, just to finalize this. That would mean that if Bitcoin again came down 30%, we're looking at a return to somewhere between 13,500 for a rising gradient bottom, or 11,000, 12,500, something like this, for a fairly straight across accumulation channel. But either way, this backup will happen. Whether we hit 19 or 17,500 before it happens, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not trying to sell the top. I'm going to try to re-leverage into my positions at the LPS phases. Anyways, I'm going to lastly look at Link in the DeFi space here really quickly. So I do believe we are witnessing, actually, yeah, I do believe we're about to see the breakout of a bunch of the rest of the market too. It could be as Bitcoin consolidates its price action. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But if you've been watching with us, again, we're looking at these phase A. Here's our phase B. I kind of messed this one up. Here's phase C. I actually thought this was the spike. But it actually looks like this was a spring. I saw Baloo point that one out. Thanks for that, Baloo. You can recognize that again by the stopping action in the volume and supply area here. This is a very beautiful sentiment. So thanks for pointing that one out, Baloo. I love the private oh yeah, I'm swearing now. I love the private mastermind group, because we all work together, and sometimes you miss these small features, and this volume signature here likely represents phase C. So that means we're probably moving into phase E of this reaccumulation range here on Chainlink, which is quite exciting. I don't want to look at all the like Wi-Fi or band. I just want to look at DeFi perpetuals in general. So this is the entire DeFi market. And I want to share something that Blue pointed out in the private group. So thanks for sharing these, Blue. Was in general, if we look at the way Link was performing, and we saw that stopping action again, remembering that was the spring. Link is in a very bullish reaccumulation range right now, because it's in what we call a rising gradient bottom, where it does something like this. And then at the spring, which I pointed out, that Baloo pointed out, you'd have this volume spike come down as well. So here we're seeing again the spring, or this stopping action right at the volume bar. So here's how you would draw, and this is another type of reaccumulation range that I'm actually not as confident with, but they're quite predominant in these falling reaccumulations. You would probably often see them as falling wedges too, which you would have overlap of that. But again, what we're looking for is the horizontal trading range. So right now, if I clean this back up a little bit, and then we look at it again, like we've been looking at all of our Wyckoff accumulation ranges, you have the same mentality. You have a phase A, a phase B, you have your spring, and what's about to become your phase E. So what I really like about this is, again, the private group, guys, thank you for all being so participatory in it, because eventually this is what it was supposed to be, and it's working beautifully. So thank you guys for all humbly going down the process of learning and trying new things. I'm actually going to be doing that too. So I'm going to segue here from the DeFi into another portion of the rest of this video, but for now we'll finish this with with the DeFi perpetuals. It looks like DeFi is about to start its SOS and complete its backup phase, and you can be damn well sure that when that backup phase starts, I'm going to be leaning into my positions with DeFi, because every time we've seen DeFi rebound, it's rebounded in orders of magnitude sometimes. So I think, well, not every time. So sometimes it's rebounded in orders of magnitude, right? So even here on the DeFi perpetuals, from the spring to this SOS, you see a 50% return. And I don't want to play this spring. It's still too risky for me. What I want to see is the SOS finalized, complete, and then I want to make my entries in the backup position once I know that the new trading and accumulation range has formed. Because I've made a mistake in that in the past, trying to enter in the spring, and when I really should have just waited for the backup phase to turn around and start its LPS, SOS, LPS, SOS, LPS, SOS type phase that comes next. It just makes sense and allows me to be even more productive in terms of how I accumulate during my strategy of the beginning of a bull market cycle. Okay, so for the last thing here, what we're going to do is talk about some of the future. So I'm not going to put anything up on the screen. I'm just going to look into the camera right now. I have an interview tomorrow. Two, actually. One's a podcast, one's an interview. And I'm going to be seeing if I might be joining like Getcoin's kernel fellowship. I don't exactly know what it means yet. I was referred by a friend to join because I think this Web3 stuff, Ethereum, what all of this provides for the global economy and ecosystem is fascinating to me. It's been this way for me for a long time. And I think maybe in some of the videos, it has been less clear to people that I'm not, as much as I'm using the understanding of trading with leverage and margin to my advantage, because it can be quite lucrative in terms of building adventure capital, I'm extremely interested in the scientific kind of questions that can be answered to some degree or another, or at least philosophical questions that can be answered through the building of this tech. So this fellowship for me represents my discerning interest to be curious and remain humble enough to try to learn more while moving forward and adapting all the fun things that I think that can, like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to write code, even though I might have to mess around and like play around to see if I can do it. I don't think that I'll really be able to do it, right? I've got great pattern skills for music, but it's too old of a dog right now to learn those tricks. What I can do is help bridge gaps between both of those worlds of understanding. So I'm going to be extending my study. So I'm also going to be starting writing more, most likely, about the DeFi sector. I think that what Web3 or Ethereum, maybe things like Avalanche, I don't know who the winner is going to be. Right now, it's the concept and the philosophy that interests me the most. Then that's decentralization. So thank you guys all for joining along this journey. And I know it maybe hasn't always been as clear. Like if you joined from the beginning of the channel, you'll definitely know that my interest in this is technological, or more so scientific, which is that I'm not trying to be right. If we end up being correct in our hypothesis, it means we just thought about it long enough, we were able to get close enough. Sometimes we are right and we don't even necessarily know we're going to be right. We stumble upon these things almost entirely by accident. And I recognize that a good chunk of my life is that randomness and that not serendipity that happens. So to stay focused on the contribution of the fact that I'm really interested in these things, not just from a monetary standpoint, but from the questions that they can help answer. 'Cause in my spare time, I watch videos about like geomorphology with Randall Carlson. I love watching videos about the ancient megaliths by like Brian Forster and like the guy that he works with. Yusuf Aliwan. I think what I like the most is asking somewhat of a disruptive question, whether it's in the scientific or technological world, and Bitcoin and these technologies have always fit in that, and that's why I've been interested in them. The monetary aspects have been fantastic, and we all need that. We all need monetary incentivization. That's why proof of work is such an interesting concept. Fascinating, really, to understand how some of these things work, because what we're trying to do is create a gamified interaction between the human consciousness and the technology. This is a symbiotic relationship between the human species and technology that's taking place, as far as I can tell. Now, Thank you guys for joining for the last part of the video. For those of you that made it through, give us a thumbs up if you like this content. I wanted to exercise my right of freedom of expression here and share with you, we're going to be including more of the deep dive stuff as we move forward. It was like years of practicing, figuring out, learning where the markets were, all like what are moving averages, volumes, and all these different indicators, was the supply and the importance of demand. To be able to make well-timed, well-positioned trades into the beginning of a bull market, and that will be very valuable. But I'm much more interested in startups, business ventures, and learning how people are helping answer some of the world's most abstract and difficult problems. So anyways, we'll leave it at that. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you guys again on the episode. I hope you enjoyed today's intro to the video. If you didn't full screen it, start it over again, let the whole video play again back. Sign up for our affiliate links. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't. Do whatever you guys want. I'm so grateful for the support at this point. The fact that I get the chance to run around and try all these new ideas. I'm playing music on weekends. I'm talking about turmeric tea on like every third blue moon or something. I appreciate that the freedom in the space as a creator and as an artist who's like, again, fascinated by so many of these different questions, to be able to do that and to be able to remain true to my interests, that's not just entirely monetarily focused. Anyways, okay, that's it. That's the end one.